Today, we're going to go through 17 common mistakes people do and don't do with their pensions and retirement that cost them dearly. I've also got a few tips and tricks to help you out. There's something in this for absolutely everyone, but I don't want to waste time today. I want to keep it real snappy, so let's just get on with it, shall we? Starting with number one, sticking with the defaults. 90 to 95% of all people in work-based auto-enrolment schemes are in the default funds. This is the off-the-shelf investment that the pension provider gives you if you do not pick your own fund. Now, why is this important? Where plan members passively accept the default arrangements offered to them, then the provider's choice of the default fund type will be a crucial determinant of their subsequent retirement income. The fund they choose for you will dictate how much money you have in retirement. If you were designing a fund that had to have millions of different people in it, all with their own risk profiles and appetites, how would you do that? The answer is you would lean towards being more cautious to make sure that you appease the most amount of people. It's better to be too bland and too spicy, but we love a bit of spice. We love it. This paper called Damage by Default explores the impact of moving from the default fund to a fund that is 20% more risky. The results they modelled for doing this on an average income were startling, as much as £15,000 a year in extra retirement income. An extra 15k a year. Look, no returns are promised, of course, but in a world where we're constantly reminded that we need to be saving more and paying more into our pensions for retirement, this simple act of just getting out of the default funds into something that's more suited to your own risk profiles can have this massive impact. And the maddest thing is, it's completely free to do it. You just log on and pick a different fund, a fund that suits what you want to do. Below, I've linked a pension sheet that goes through some of the default funds and a load of fund choices for some of the most popular providers in the UK. And if you're unsure about picking your own funds and you don't know what to do, then that's where tip number 2 comes in. Did you know you can ask your pension provider to release £500 from your pension tax-free for the purposes of getting advice on retirement? It's called the Pensions Advice Allowance. So it has to be with a qualified financial advisor about retirement, and you can only do it 3 times in total throughout your life. But if you're unsure about anything, it's a great way to get some reassurance and some advice or guidance on your specific circumstances. Moneyhelper.org have a guide on the types of things you might want to spend this on. Unfortunately, not all pension providers will allow you to do this because, they're dicks. Which brings me on to point 3, partial transfers. One of the worst things about work-based auto-enrolment schemes is the lack of choice when it comes to investing options and then ultimately the fees. These companies in some cases are just taking the piss, and there's very little you can do about it, unfortunately, because you don't get to decide who your employer uses. But in some cases, there is something you can do about it. Some providers will let you transfer out the balance of your work scheme into a scheme of your own. This is called a partial transfer, as you normally need to leave some money in the pension to make sure that the scheme stays active and that you continue to get the benefits from your employer, like the match contribution. We're not looking to move everything away. All we're looking to do is build up a pot over, say, a year, then transfer a chunk of it into our own SIPP or whatever, so that we have more choice and less fees. Not all providers allow this. Me and my team actually called loads of them asking if they did, and we found most wouldn't give us a straight answer at all, claiming it depends on your scheme and that they couldn't possibly answer, and really just not being upfront at all. From their perspective, they hate people doing this. Partial transfers, that is, because they want money with them so that they can get their fees. But just call them up and ask if that's an option for you. Have your policy number to hand, and you'll find that out by logging onto your pension provider's portal. Just again, please make sure you don't accidentally boot yourself out the scheme. Always check directly before acting on any of this, but maybe give them a call and say, I want to move my funds, but I want to stay an active member of the scheme. Is that okay? Okay. Next up, claiming tax relief is at number 4. This is one of my favourites. I got an Insta message the other day from a lady named Katie. Thanks to your video, my housemate and I gained back £2,000 each by claiming our tax relief on pensions as higher rate taxpayers. An average of 80% of higher rate taxpayers eligible to claim tax relief through self-assessment tax returns failed to do so between 2016 and 2019. Alongside an estimated 53% of additional rate taxpayers. 1.5 million people in 2018. Plenty of people watching this video, I'm sure, and that number's going to go up because the amount of people paying higher rate tax is higher than ever before, and the taxman just isn't in a rush to let people know that they should be doing this. If you pay into a pension like a SIPP from an income that's already been taxed, you get 20% added immediately at source, and then you'll need to fill out a self-assessment to get the rest if you're a higher or additional rate taxpayer. Most people in that position know this, but if you're an employee paying into a work-based scheme, you might also need to do that self-assessment. From what I can work out, it all comes down to if your pension scheme is net pay arrangement or relief at source. Go ask your HR department and get your money. You can contact HMRC as well and ask them. You can claim back up to 4 financial years worth of tax relief, and then going forward, every year you can claim again. So Katie not only gets her 2k back for the last 4 years, say, she also gets to claim an amount every single year going forwards now. Go on, Katie. There's an Aviva article linked below for you that goes into more detail, and there's another link next to that on how you can claim back from HMRC. Right, let's keep this pace going, shall we? Number 5, opting out. 10% of people still opt out of their work-based pensions. Look, I get it. Times are hard. I need the money now. I would rather control it myself, and I probably won't live to see the benefit of it anyway. I get all of those sentiments. But to be honest, the chances are you will get old. And just see it as your money in a deferred payment account. It's money for your future self, and your employer is going to add free money on top of whatever you do as well. I can't, give you investment advice. I can't tell you what to do, but I really think you should be in that scheme. Number 6, missing out on lost or forgotten pensions. According to the Pensions Policy Institute, in 2022, there were over 2.8 million pension pots that are considered lost and have not been claimed by their rightful owners. The government has a free tool you can go through that helps you track down lost pensions. If that doesn't work, call everyone you've ever worked for and ask them, who was the pension provider at the time I worked for you, and was I part of the scheme? Number 7, addressing the big issue. One of the key reasons people lose pensions is they neglect to inform previous employers and pension providers currently that they've moved address. Only 1 in 25 people inform their pension provider when they move home. So what about all those pots from previous employers? This is your money, don't let it go missing. Number 8, assuming auto-enrolment will be enough. It's widely believed by experts that you should be paying around 10 to 15% of your monthly income into retirement savings. Most people in an auto-enrolment scheme are paying in around 8% of their income. But it isn't actually 8% of your income, because the amount you pay in and the amount that is matched by your employer is based on a percentage of what is called qualified earnings. The minimum auto-enrolment contribution levels are based on these qualifying earnings, which sit between £6,240 and £50,270. So if you earn £25,000 a year, that's 25k minus the 6,240 bottom limit of the qualifying earnings. That leaves you £18,760. It's that figure that they base the percentages on, so you're not paying in as much as you thought. And the same applies if you earn over the top threshold of 50,270. Many employers, to be fair to them, will offer more generous schemes, but these are the minimum requirements. If you're in your early 20s paying into a scheme at these levels your whole life, that might be enough. But if you're in your 40s, you're now in auto-enrolment, and in your earlier career it wasn't available and you didn't do any pension savings, you might want to actively be paying more in to catch up, either by paying more into your work-based scheme or by setting up a SIPP on the side. Anything is better than nothing. I just want you to have a good retirement. And the auto-enrolment is great, but it's also by design creating apathy, and people need to be asking themselves, am I actually saving enough here? That last one applied to PAYE workers. This point number 9 is more for the self-employed, and it's probably an even bigger concern. 76% of the self-employed are not paying anything into a pension at all. I understand that you might be building a business that you one day hope to sell, or as someone who is self-employed, you might think, reinvesting into my business is a better use of my money. But one day you won't be able to work, and your business might not have delivered you the life-changing exit or income to support you for the rest of your life. Having a pension, even a small one on the side, can operate as a plan B in later life if you need it. It's also a really tax-efficient way to save money, especially if you're a limited company, because any payments into your pension save you corporation tax on that amount. Number 10 is not shopping around. A 1% fee on a portfolio over 25 to 30 years takes around 25% of the pot off you roughly. Fees are not everything, but they are the only thing that we can control with certainty. The market has never had more choice. Just because, you've been with a platform for years doesn't mean that you should stay with them. Just keep an eye on the fees and vote with your feet. Many legacy brokers are just ripping people off due to their brands, and a lot of financial advisors are doing the same. I've included a video below that reviews different SIPP options for you to take a look at. Maybe when you started you were just unsure about investing and now you feel more confident. I don't know. Just keep an eye on it. It's another one of those things like getting out of the default fund that can produce significantly more in returns and thus a bigger retirement for you in terms of how much you can spend without you paying an extra penny in. At number 11, we've got state pension. More specifically, don't count on it. The younger you are, the more this point applies. Currently, state pension is a very important part of retirement planning. Even for the richest cohort, it makes up a big chunk of their total income. but I suspect over time that that's going to change. I'm going to make a full video on the future of the state pension based on government research papers and that of the IFS. But I will say this for now. In its current form, the pension system long-term is unsustainable. It's been said before that the UK pension system is going the same way as Australia's. And they mean test their state pension component, meaning, if you've got too much money, you won't get it. That's just one potential option that we could look at long term here, but it's just a nod to the fact that you can't count on state pension. For number 12, let's now shift to the end of the timeline and look at mistakes in retirement, starting with drawing too early. At the age of 55, at the earliest, for many it's going to be older than that, you can take 25% of a pension pot as a lump sum, tax-free. The maximum you can take is £268,275. First of all, according to Standard Life, only 43% of people over 55 are even aware of this. But just because you can take that lump sum doesn't mean that you should. For me, unless I have a very specific reason for what I want to spend that money on, I won't be taking it out. I think many people just get to that age, think, I've not been able to touch this money for years, give me all of it. Maybe, there are some good reasons that people want to pay off their mortgage or whatever, but just to have it sat there in a bank account is completely pointless. In fact, it's damaging. You could have continued to let that money compound inside the tax wrapper of a pension instead. I'll be aiming to get myself to a point where I don't need the 25% tax-free lump sum, and I'll instead use the tax-free portion to draw an income on a monthly basis, meaning that I can take monthly income from my pension tax-free and then supplement it by, like an ISA, so I'll be able to take a big income every month without paying tax. If you want to take the 25% lump sum all in one, go for it, but don't just do it for the sake of it. Have a plan on what you're going to do, because taking it all at once, will reduce your ability to be tax efficient. Number 13, trigger the money purchase annual allowance, MPAA. This is a rule in the UK pension system that limits the amount you can contribute to your defined contribution pensions once you start accessing your pension benefits flexibly. You can still take your 25% lump sum we just spoke about and be okay, but there's a list of criteria that will trigger the MPAA, and once it is triggered, the amount that you can pay into your scheme reduces significantly, from 60k in total including tax relief and employer contributions, all the way down to 10k. That is a huge decline at a period where you might really be trying to focus on pension contributions, so just don't accidentally trigger it. Again, more details on that and all the other points below for you in the description. Number 14, just focusing on a pension. Pensions are probably the best all-round way of saving for retirement when you consider total tax efficiency, but they're restricted in terms of their access. This also applies to defined benefit schemes, those of you working in public services, a doctor, a nurse, whatever. But building up a pot on the side, like a stocks and shares ISA, will give you more flexibility and control over your time. I want to stop working at 50. I'll use my ISA to fund that period between 50 and my pension kicking in. I list all of the stocks and shares ISAs I use in the description of every video. But I often get doctors and staff asking me, what can I do? I have a great pension, but I won't be able to access it until I'm older. I tend to shy away from discussing DB pension schemes because I just don't know enough about them, and I wouldn't want to sit here and pretend I do when they're quite complicated. But an ISA gives everyone the flexibility to draw an income from it tax-free whenever they like, without impacting the benefits you also get with your pension, assuming, early retirement clauses, things like this are being adhered to. Also, having multiple pots with different rules gives you the flexibility to deal with any rule changes between now and when you retire, which brings me on to point 15, governments pissing around. I doubt anyone with actual power will watch this video, but the biggest mistake relating to pensions in the UK is the government's constant meddling with them, using them as a political hockey puck to win votes, changing the rules of what is possible and creating just mass uncertainty and fear. You can't ask people to save into something for 30 plus years when the rules of the game are being changed, literally on an annual basis. Set the rules, stick to them, and leave the bloody things alone so the nation has the confidence that they can place their money into them. Number 16, pensions for kids. This is arguably the greatest gift that you can give a child. Slap some money into a junior SIPP for them when they're young, and then give them the ability to compound their wealth from a young age for the whole of their lives potentially. They can't touch it in their younger years either, which means they can't blow it, and they get tax relief benefits. You can pay in up to £2,880 every year, and the government then adds £720 in tax relief. That's a really big number though. You don't need to be paying in that much. You could just stick in £10 or £20 a month and a bit extra on birthdays, and when your child finally realises, holy crap, I need to be saving for retirement, in you ride with all the glory being able to go, look, I've been contributing to this SIPP for years for you and it's been working away in the background. Now it's your turn to take it over. Number 17, the final one, ease up on yourself. I'm guilty of this. Most of the conversation that exists around pensions in the UK is fear-mongering, doom and gloom, pension crisis, you're not saving enough, all this negative chat. But if you just actively participate in your pension, look to reduce the fees and pick a fund that suits you that isn't the default fund, you can make a meaningful difference in how much you end up with without even paying in an extra penny potentially. Let's take some real ownership of what will likely be the most valuable asset that we will ever own, so we know what we're buying, why we're buying it, when we're going to access it, and what we're going to do with that money. If you feel like, you're sat there going, I've started all a bit too late, Damien, and I don't know what to do, well, don't worry, I've got you back as well. You should watch this video next, where I show you it's not only possible to save up for a really good retirement later in life, it might be optimal. Right, see you there, have a great day, guys.